What if you could attend a film festival online? Well, that is a very real reality, as today we're talking about the virtual Sundance Film Festival. After starting as the Utah US Film Festival in 1978 with a slate of films including Midnight Cowboy, Girlfriends, A Streetcar Named Desire, and Mean Streets, with a focus on highlighting American film, independent film, and to make the possibility of shooting films in Utah a reality, the festival that would later be known as Sundance would begin. In 1981, it would then become the US Film and Video Festival, moving to Park City, Utah, and moving the film festival from September to January, inadvertently setting itself up to be the earliest of the big film festivals, and quickly becoming an attractive festival to premiere your film at. The festival would later become taken over by the Sundance Institute in 1984, before officially changing its name to the Sundance Film Festival in 1981 after the Sundance Kid, played by Robert Redford, one of the founders of the festival. And looking through old festival programs, it's kind of unreal to see what was being released every single year. In 1993 alone, the festival played Wong Kar-wai's Days of Being Wild, the extremely underrated Just Another Girl on the IRT, the subversive and surreal Orlando starring Tilda Swinton, slick and stylish Hong Kong action flick Hard Boiled, and Tetsuo 2 Body Hammer, sequel to one of the most influential Japanese body horror films of all time, Tetsuo the Iron Man. In 1995, the festival would open with the beautiful Before Sunrise, as well as play legendary queer icon Greg Araki's The Doom Generation and a little film starring the 90s indie it girl, Parker Posey in Party Girl. In 2003, they played movies like 28 Days Later, potentially the greatest zombie film of all time. In 2006, the indie family comedy classic Little Miss Sunshine played. And now let's go to the present, to the modern Sundance Film Festival, one that in response to the COVID-19 pandemic had an entirely virtual film festival in 2021 and 2022, as was the industry standard at the time, and gave an outlet and voice to a number of independent films that were given the space to flourish, with a number of major Hollywood studios delaying a number of their films or holding off some of their bigger productions just going into production. And now since 2023, the festival's been in a hybrid format. All the movies are now playing in person, and most of them are still playing online, again with some caveats, and the experience being at best, I think, mixed for most people. With some controversy that's led to two of the films being pulled from the online portion of the festival mid-festival in 2025, including one of the films I'm covering today, and the same film that a number of my friends bought a ticket for and never received a refund for. I question if this is the last virtual Sundance Film Festival. There is a lot of uncertainty about what's happening next with Sundance, and I think it does make people very cautious about what's happening next, not just the virtual portion of the festival, but also the in-person portion. There's a plan for the film festival to move physically in 2027. Now, the three finalist cities are Cincinnati, Ohio, Denver, Colorado, and strangely enough, Park City did make the finalist list, so it might actually stay. Let's keep this all in the back of our minds when we think about everything that I'm talking about today, but I want to focus now just on my experience about the 2025 virtual Sundance Film Festival, what I thought of all the films, the 11 that I watched, and my ranking, and just kind of, who I think these movies are for. And also, I just want to share the cost, because my god, the cost is getting more and more and more expensive every single year. And also just some of the tech issues that I feel like no one ever talks about when it comes to the virtual festival, and why I think they need to fix it, especially considering that cost. Stay strapped in. I'm very excited to be talking about all 11 movies I watch. I do think there's something for everybody that I'm talking about today, and also because a lot of these movies don't have footage readily available online, you'll be seeing footage from other Sundance movies or other movies featuring these actors and directors, so you can also check out those movies while you're waiting for these movies I'm talking about today. If you like this video, please consider liking, commenting with some of the movies that you see in this video today that you might want to check out, or also consider subscribing and hitting that bell. Or you can follow me on other places, including Letterboxd, where I've been posting movie reviews for the past 5 years, or on TikTok, where I've been posting daily for the past 2 years, even though we don't really know what's happening with that app, or follow me on Instagram or Blue Sky. Without further ado, let me talk about my experience with virtual Sundance 2025. I'm going to be extremely frank and candid about the cost of the festival. The cost for the festival has grown and grown to the point where it feels harder to justify the expense every single year. In 2021, for the first virtual festival, it was $15 a ticket. In 2022 and 2023, it jumped up to $20 a ticket. I also started attending the virtual Sundance Film Festival in 2023, catching only 5 films that year, and having not wanted to spend the $300 for the virtual pass that would allow me to see 10 films and also select them early. And then in 2024, I bought the virtual pass, again covering 10 virtual tickets, but this year the cost being $350 for that pass, and also $25 for each individual ticket. And again, the justification for spending $35 on a ticket versus $25 on a ticket is selecting those films early. Some of these movies do sell out every single year. And there were some really amazing films in 2024, so it was a very easy choice to do, including the Academy Award nominated A Real Pain, and one of the best indie films of 2024, Dee Dee, and also justified my thoughts about buying 2 more tickets for the festival on top of my pass. And then now in 2025, the virtual pass still costs $350 and still gives you 10 tickets, but the individual tickets have ballooned to $35 a piece. To me, this disincentivized purchasing the pass at all for many. I suspect that was the case when the virtual passes were supposedly sold out much later than they have in previous years, and replaced with an $800 virtual pass that grants you unlimited access to the entire entire slate of films at the festival, which is a poor investment since online viewers can only see films the final Thursday through Sunday of each festival, and that's just the ones available online. Now, I hinted at this before, and it's likely that most people don't know unless they follow the festival circuit, and it's likely that most of those people are also watching this video. I assume that around 15 to 25% of the films at each Sundance are unavailable for online pass holders. Some of these films may seem random every single year, but all the films available in all the major awards categories are available online, but movies from A24 never are. In the past, this is why I've been unable to see I Saw the TV Glow, A Different Man, and Past Lives. And this year, this affected my ability to be able to see the Iowa Debris horror film Opus, the Rose Byrne comedy drama If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, and the children's film The Legend of Uchi. And this is specifically for the case of films going into the festival that do have distribution from A24, and not the ones that were picked up later, including Sorry Baby, which I saw virtually, and then A24 purchased days later, after a bidding war between them, Neon, and Mubi. And yes, it is very possible you can hear of a film from an actor, director, or writer you love, and you will not have access to that film despite the money that you use to buy a pass. However, I will say Sundance is always extraordinarily transparent about what movies you can and can't see online, and that'll be very clear as soon as you look at the program guide and look at the movies that are available to see for each festival. And for those who want further disclosure from me, I've never found any financial success in talking about these movies online. I think for me, I'm really passionate about talking about these movies that don't really have a home, and I like to help them find a home. I do this all because I'm a hardcore movie lover, I follow all these films closely, and just because this is my second job. Now, in terms of important dates for at least this past year's festival, virtual passes and in-person tickets were available starting October 23rd, 2024. The mostly full Sundance program guide was available starting on December 5th. Note I said mostly just because a handful of films are added each week leading up to the festival, but all these films are typically announced before the selection date for films. And personally, I bought my virtual pass on December 11th of this year. I did want to see the program guide for this year before I decided to spend this much money. After seeing it, I felt pretty good about my purchase and I bought the pass, and this is also the latest I've ever bought the pass without it selling out. Going through my emails and the press releases I can find, I don't see an explicit announcement for when passes were gone or when the $800 unlimited pass appeared, but I assume that it was late December when this all happened. I would then select my tickets on January 14th, 2025, with individual tickets available 2 days later on the 16th. And as of the festival starting and me browsing excess tickets, most were available starting at the beginning of the festival this year, which in years past was not really the case. There's always a couple of films that were always sold out going into the festival. One of the most notable in 2024 has to be Thelma for me. Now, despite handling 5 years of virtual film festivals, the Sundance Film Festival website cannot handle the traffic for any of this at all. Each year leading up to the festival, we're told to favorite each of the individual films that we want to see and the screening times that we want to see them, which is much more important for in-person people. And as soon as it hits 10 a.m. Mountain Time every single year that we can select films, the page would crash, the page would go blank. I would often be able to see the movie's individual page, but I could not select anything because the buying ticket option would just be gone all of a sudden on the page. And time again, there's people always sharing about this experience happening on Twitter or on Reddit or just all over the internet, and the solution here every single time is just to reload the page over and over again until you can finally toggle something and buy a ticket and hope that it goes through. Sometimes the page would crash before I got to the full confirmation page, but then I would get the email notification saying that I got the ticket, which was always true, always the case. Those email notifications are most right all the time. And then sometimes if you click too frequently buying a ticket, you can buy multiple tickets for the same movie, which is something that you're normally unable to do all throughout the festival. It makes it even more odd that this is a glitch that I've encountered in the past 2 years. Buying the pass, I've been able to see every single movie I've wanted to, and in 2024, not favoriting each screening ahead of time made the movie selection process take an hour and 45 minutes for me, and favoriting them in 2025, even with the tech issues that I had, even with them being much more numerous this year than past years, I could select all the movies I want in less than 40 minutes. Speaking of issues, let's talk about the overall viewing experience, the tech issues I had, and what went really well this year. Now, for the last 3 years, picture quality for each of the films has been crystal clear without any lag. It's a really astounding visual experience. There's no notes there. Subtitles have been a significant issue in the past, with most of the films I watch in 2024 not having subtitles or a clear option to toggle them. But with this festival in 2025, I had subtitles for every single film I watched -2 without me having to change major settings on my Roku, where I stream the majority of films every single year. As for audio issues, I never have any on my laptop. I'm sure that's where most people are actually watching their movies for the festival, but I always have issues streaming the movies through my Roku. And for some of these issues, I just had to rewind a little bit, and for some I had to completely exit the movie and come back, often making the movie take much longer to watch than I think it was intended. And the audio issues overall were very odd. Sometimes someone would get to the end of the word speaking something and there would be a loud beep all of a sudden everything would be fine. Sometimes I'd hear that loud beep and then all of a sudden one of the audio tracks would cut out. Like in one scene I could hear the sound effects and the music and just everything going on in the background, and I could hear one person talking and then all of a sudden the other person is just completely silent even though I can see their lips moving and see the subtitles going on. Sometimes the movie would get extraordinarily quiet, I'd have to exit, go back, and then I'd realize, oh my god, I couldn't hear anything because of this. Sometimes it gets insanely loud and the sound gets all distorted. I have to shut off the movie quickly because it sounds like my TV is going to explode. And the frequency of this varied from film to film, but with InDesign, a film from this year, I had 29 issues during the 90-minute film. With Twinless, a 100-minute long film, I had 33 issues, or roughly an issue every 3 minutes per film. It's made me question if I should view these films on my laptop and not my TV, but I want to watch all these films on the biggest screen that I can. And it's a lot to consider if these issues are taking place when you're now spending $35 a ticket, and that's if the film you're watching is not pulled, and I will speak about that sadly more later. You have enough of a background on the festival now that I feel comfortable sharing about the 11 films I watched and how I'd rank them. My least favorite of the festival by far has to be Bunny Lover. Directed by, written by, and starring as the lead Katarina Ju, she portrays Rebecca, a Chinese-American woman who seems to be drifting through time, trying to find her place in the world, as she partakes in camming in order to make some income while being dissatisfied with the majority of relationships in her life, whether it's with her close artist friend played by Rachel Sennett, who is why I bought the ticket for the film in the first place, and also this woman struggling with a relationship with her distant father, and also a concerning relationship that has begun with one of her camming clients. Now, the reality of Rebecca speaks to many. Online sex work has become increasingly common as time goes on, with less stigma being attached to the profession, but there's still being clear stigma, and since the pandemic, many more people have become lonely, and others are losing their other professions, leading them to sex work online. This causes an inherent relatability towards this aspect of Rebecca's personhood, as is the same when speaking about the other relationships in her life. I don't know, it feels like this is still a very unique kind of film, even though there's other films about sex work, and I can't really deny that when talking about this movie, but at the same time, what made this so disappointing for me is it feels like none of these ideas develop in ways that feel beyond the surface level. I can understand that she's distant from her father, I can understand these stereotypes that shape why she might be distant from her father, but I don't really understand that as a whole. Not saying that we need entire interiority of her character, but still there isn't really much for me to latch on other than these stereotypes I'm gathering at the very surface level. This was one that I was really looking forward to, and I sadly have to give this film 2.5 out of 5 stars. At 10, we have the satire Atropia, or the grand jury winner of the Sundance Film Festival, which is the crown jewel of the entire festival. This film follows an actress played by Alia Shakwat who is enrolled in a military role-playing training exercise where she plays an Iraqi woman who falls in love with a soldier cast as an insurgent. Now, in online circles, the Sundance Grand Jury Prize is not viewed in high esteem, with some viewing the Audience Prize in much higher esteem. In 2024, In the Summers won the Grand Jury Prize and the DD won the Audience Award. In 2023, 1001 won the Jury Prize and the Persian version won the Audience Award, with the former being much stronger. Seriously, Tiana Taylor should have been nominated for an Oscar last year, and she honestly should have won. In 2023, Nanny won the Grand Jury and Cha Cha Real Smooth won the Audience Prize, and in 2021, Coda won both, and then in 2020, Minari won both. Now, I knew over a dozen people who saw Atropia as part of their time at the festival, whether they were in person, whether it was virtual, whether they bought tickets for the awards winners, or just, bought this generally like I did. And I want to say, of all the people who watched the movie, only one of them actually enjoyed it. In my opinion, while I do appreciate a film critiquing political theater in the United States, especially by having a literal political theater going on in the film, it feels very neat in 2025, but there's such a disjointed nature to the film. Segments feel unequal in their hilarity, and also the funniest gag involving a well-known actor training for a war film happened so early in the film that we felt spoiled, especially because everything after that doesn't feel nearly as funny. And again, while the satire in this feels so needed, and I get why people find this so funny, it also feels like the satire is a bit weak to me because it conflates the idea of beating the same idea into your head over and over and over again and thinking that makes the idea deeper rather than actually making the idea deeper. I don't know, there's a much smarter movie somewhere deep inside of this, but I sadly have to give Atropia a 3 out of 5. At 9, we have the romantic drama Love, Brooklyn, where we have an all-black ensemble cast and follow 3 Brooklynites as they navigate the trials and tribulations of their 30s and are caught up in a messy love triangle. What's painful for me about ranking this film so low is that there needs to be more films like this with an all-black or at least mostly all-black ensemble cast. Audiences are clearly craving movies like this, and I get why. Our trio here is unreal between Andre Holland, Nicole Bahari, and DeWanda Wise, really chewing up the scenery in these beautiful slice-of-life segments that just allow our characters to exist, reflecting on gentrification through nuanced conversation. But when the film shifts to melodrama and a contrived and predictable entanglement of the love triangle develops, you just get swept up in the emotions that you expect. It's really easy to relate to all these characters, but oftentimes their motivations and therefore their conflicts feel underdeveloped and exist to add attention to the film for the sake of needing it. This is the classic example of a movie having a really great idea but not a great execution, and I do want to say that Rachel Abigail Gail Holder did a fantastic job with her debut as a director. I will specifically look out for her direction credits in the future. The film sadly gets a 3 out of 5 stars for me. At number 8, a movie that I bought a ticket for solely because it had the sexy lawyer from Anatomy of a Fall, we have Swan Arlen and Suckwan Island. The film follows a 13-year-old boy who's given the opportunity to reconnect with his father and spend a year on the titular Suckwan Island out in the remote wilderness of Norway as they build their relationship. Now, this is only part of the story, and any synopsis online makes what I'm about to say seem really wild, but the first half of this film is a heartwarming family drama of sorts, and then the film transforms into a survival thriller as the wilderness around them comes for these men. The way that this builds into tension for the second half feels impressive to me, but also it's where the film feels very contrived and kind of rushed as it tries to get to all these story beats for these two men. And I will say, while I really did enjoy the performances that we have from these two main cast members, the film collapses underneath its own weight in the last 15 minutes of the movie with a series of narrative decisions that are baffling in execution and will really make or break the movie for some people. The movie even ends with a series of text boxes explaining that the film was based off a short story, the inspiration for that story, and spelling out what happens in those questionable 15 minutes. Seriously, I was reading a number of reviews that were naming, did the film, shift into some kind of supernatural surrealism? Was it hinting at some kind of dream logic going on in the film? And while I can get both of those interpretations, there's nothing really wrong with that. It just speaks to what happens at the end being so baffling to so many people, and the film being so unclear in how it handles kind of a multi-layered twist. I think for most people, especially when this film gets a general release, it will be very unclear, and I'm so mortified how the general public will receive this film. I will also have to give this movie a 3 out of 5 stars. At number 7, we have By Design, a movie where Juliette Lewis's love for more once she's turned into a chair, a satire about objectification directed by Amanda Kramer, who I quickly became a fan of after seeing her queer musical Please Baby Please, and her horror film about a late night show gone wrong, Give Me Pity, which actually came out before Late Night with the Devil. Now, at first I was pretty split on how to rate this one, whether it was in the ranking overall or just what I would give this stars wise, but I have to give this film credit for what it is. It's so deeply imaginative in execution, it's unique in the way that it navigates the surrealness, and not to grade Kramer's newest film on a curve, but this is my least favorite of her works. There's a film here that's really genuinely funny at times. I think it's also very smart and creative in the commentary that it has, and there's also a meta commentary that I haven't seen many people speak up on, where the fact that Juliette Lewis's presence in the film also speaks to the subjectification. That's where the genius ends for me, though. I don't think the film is much more clever than that. I feel like that's a big shame, again, considering how much I loved Amanda Kramer's other films. I will revisit this one in the future, but for now I do have to give this a 3 out of 5. At 6, we have Ricky, following 30-year-old Ricky recently having been incarcerated at 15, having lived half of his life inside of prison walls as he adjusts to having independence as an adult. Now, Stephen James really blew me away after I saw him in If Beale Street Could Talk, directed by Barry Jenkins, who you probably all know for directing Moonlight. So many people need to give If Beale Street Could Talk a chance. It was an amazing movie. There is a real magic in his performance in that film, and I've also enjoyed him in everything else that I've seen him in, including last year's Babes, but there's something that also really transcends from that If Beale Street Could Talk performance into this role in Ricky. Now, a major selling point for this film has to be the presence of Cheryl Lee Ralph, who you probably all know from Abbott Elementary. She uses a questionable Jamaican accent as we see her play his parole officer in this film. I have to say, her role is pretty limited. I think her character is pretty stereotypical. I think the commentary that exists by her character being her character in the role that she plays is very questionable to me, especially considering the fact that, she disappears partway through the film. I don't know, I feel like her role feels a little bit extraneous in this movie. A large majority of the film plays out in a predictable way, but there's also some really profound moments about what it means to be trapped inside the American prison industrial complex and how you can fail to reintegrate inside of society due to a number of factors outside of your control. For some, these are malicious people who don't fully understand the consequences of their actions, and for others, well, it's a case of indirect human error, and sadly this is the story of many incarcerated men. There are a couple issues that I have with the structure of the narrative, but again, this is a really notable film. It did have a huge impact on me. Don't let my critiques stop you from watching this movie, because I do think it's very special and very unique. I have to give Ricky a 3.5 out of 5 stars. At number 5 is Sally, a documentary about the first woman in space, Sally Ride. One of the most iconic women in STEM, and a woman who would sadly not come out until after her passing, there's a consistent and thorough reflection of what it means to be a woman in a man's world, especially at a place like NASA, where there are so few other female astronauts. I mean absolutely no offense to anyone who worked on this documentary, and yes, I do know at least one person who did work on this documentary. It's a documentary that may not be groundbreaking in shape or form, but there's such a focus on Sally Ride's queerness and how that shaped every single aspect of her life, and it feels so important to have, especially considering how iconic Sally Ride is to American history. To read that one of the most iconic American astronauts was queer and never have known that feels like such an important detail to explore. I'm glad this documentary does make space for that, especially through her life partner of 27 years, Tam O'Shaughnessy, as she's here to guide us along the way and provide some narration all all throughout the documentary. O'Shaughnessy's presence in this documentary really does add a layer of personableness when talking about it. I think that really does make this go a really long way, especially when talking about, one of the most iconic American astronauts of all time, and the fact that none of us knew she was queer until we got her obituary. I can comfortably give this documentary a 3.5 out of 5 stars. At number 4 is Obex, directed by fellow Baltimorean Albert Burney, known for his films Strawberry Mansion and Tux and Fanny. Obex follows Connor, a man living alone with his dog who never steps foot outside of his apartment, who becomes addicted to a video game, the titular Obex. His dog Sandy goes missing, and it's up to him to travel inside of the game in order to bring her home. Now, if you aren't familiar with the other films of Albert Burney, I describe them as very dreamlike in the ways that you would describe a David Lynch film. I think it's why so many people compare this film to Eraserhead. It's not just because this film is in black and white, because I think it also touches on this very lonely and isolating part of the human experience, what it means to be trapped inside of your home and not be able to get out. With a premise like this, I wasn't expecting a film so meditative and solemn, and again, going back to the Eraserhead comparisons, there's also a reflection of responsibility and isolation in this film. Media can be a escape needed for many to pull away from the dangers of a world that might not feel hospitable to someone who looks like you, and it can also be a form of self-isolationism that takes us away from any meaningful connections that we have out there in the real world. I feel like this film really does touch on that, especially when we get to the final moments of this film, which left me speechless and emotionally affected. I'm giving Obex a 4 out of 5 stars. At 3 is The Perfect Neighbor, a documentary examining the stand your ground laws in Florida as we witness a film comprised of almost entirely body cam footage and other security camera video as we see the escalation of conflict between one black family and one white woman. There is no easy way for me to talk about this documentary and the overwhelming sadness that overcame me watching this film, especially due to how heavy and explicit the footage we witness is and how easily it can be exploitative. Instead, I found this documentary to be a really loving tribute to A.J. Chantrell Owens and the pain her family is now experiencing. I understand the documentary is very heavy by nature, but I also believe it should be mandatory viewing, especially for all people and especially for non-black people. I did not believe a documentary could be crafted like this, and it is one of the most important American documentaries of this century, and that is no exaggeration. Its presentation of the events shows you that when everything goes quote-unquote right with the law, these laws mostly harm black families and create a lethal outlet for racist anger. This is an easy 5 out of 5 for me. At 2 is Twinless, that movie that you might have seen clips of shared online due to it having a sex scene with Dylan O'Brien making the rounds, causing Sundance to pull the film during the middle of the festival weekend. And so many were focused on objectifying Dylan O'Brien that they didn't even know that this was a dark comedy drama about two people forming a friendship due to being in a twin bereavement group. And look, I am more pro-piracy than most people on the internet. Not everyone has the financial means to support every film that they want to see, especially in countries where films are not made financially accessible or accessible at all due to distribution being a nightmare, especially if you live outside of a few concentrated areas of the world. But to leak part of a film with no context or interest in the context so that you can gawk at your fave nude without even knowing the title of the film when the film is just premiered online is deeply upsetting. You're ruining part of the film festival experience that I enjoy. I have not attended Sundance in person due to the cost for in-person tickets, travel, and lodging, not to mention food in a town that knows it's getting all these tourists around this time, and the festival being virtual allows for so many online critics like myself to access the festival in a way that we otherwise won't be able to. You are pirating a film that no one has been able to see, that is still at a festival just for a couple of likes and has nothing to do with the art form and entirely about the objectification of the actor. And to go back to the film, James Sweeney is our other lead here, and he also wrote and directed the film. I also fell in love with his work after his 2019 debut, Straight Up, and there's just such an effortlessly fluid and naturalistic style to his humor where sometimes two characters are riffing each other in a way that again feels like two everyday people talking. Sweeney also excels at diving into these unconventional relationships with a sharp dissection that leaves his characters his most vulnerable, especially when this film takes a very different form than you may be expecting. Please look out for more from James Sweeney. Twinless gets a 5 out of 5 stars from me. And my favorite film of the festival was Sorry Baby, the debut film from Eva Victor, internet comedian who also had her film produced by Barry Jenkins. This is actually important because, fun fact, Barry Jenkins actually gave Eva Victor the opportunity to shoot 2 different scenes over a 2-day shoot, so that way she could familiarize herself with the directing process and sit down with an editor and understand this is what you need to shoot, this is what you didn't shoot, this is what to do next time. And in order to become more comfortable with the directing experience, she actually shadowed Jane Schoenbrunn on the set of Ice of the TV Globe during the filming of the film. Sorry Baby follows Agnes after a deeply upsetting experience happens to her where she is assaulted by someone she trusts, and we spend the film sitting in Victor's dark sense of humor as Agnes tries to make sense of the world and find space to heal. So often with films that have similar premises, we may find that films exploit this trauma or become centered in revenge, but by focusing on the time after the assault, Sorry Baby feels not just restorative, but needed. And I don't mean this as any exaggeration, it is easily the best film I've seen in my entirety of attending Sundance in the last 3 years. It is honest and painful without gawking at our lead or the event that takes place, being more realistic than other films about the failings of the criminal justice system, and again, the sense of humor may shock you, but it helps us understand so much more about Agnes, sometimes showing her at her most vulnerable. One of the strongest debuts I've seen in years, and I will support and patronize whatever Eva Victor makes next. I give this film 5 out of 5 stars. Overall, despite all the technical issues, I still love my time with Sundance in 2025, and I would do it again personally. It's fun and worth it every single year just to see all these movies so early, see them during their premieres, and have the opportunity to talk about these movies just a little bit earlier than everyone else, just so I can keep hyping them up online. Every year it is a huge gamble though, you know, you're just going off of vibes, you're going off a description saying this sounds neat, right? I like this actor, or director, or writer, right? And that's all that you're going off of, and sometimes you have no idea it's bad until you're finally actually sitting down and seeing, oh my god, this movie has a 2.2 on Letterboxd. I know I was critiquing the Grand Jury Prize when it came to the Atropria win, but if you look at my top 6, 5 of those movies won awards, and there's also Obex, which again is a really amazing movie. Again, best slate by far of movies I've seen for a single Sundance, and I can't say the same for everybody because I know a couple of people who went in person and said this is the worst one that they've attended in years. And the really important question you need to ask yourself is this for you? Are you willing to spend $35 on a movie that you might not even like, that you might want to tune out of after 10 minutes, and you might not get your money's worth out of? And that's not even considering if the price of that ticket goes up again next year to what, $40, $45, $50, right? If you're scoffing at all that you might spend that much on a ticket for a bad movie, or that much on a ticket at all, this is not an experience for you. Live vicariously through me, live vicariously through other people, but my god, do not spend this much money if that scares you at all. If you want to do this because you want to get some clout online, or be a film talker, a movie influencer, or an online film critic, I think even then the answer is still no. There's really no money or fame in any of this, especially at this level, especially considering the fact that, again, most people who watch these videos want to see movies that they can see immediately. I already know there's a real possibility that this video might tank because people don't want to see these movies or hear about these movies that they can't see right now. If you want to do this because you love film, you want to see them a bit early, you want to talk about them early and help them find a home, then this might be for you, especially if you're not scoffing at that price or you do have the money to do this. If you go into this expecting to love everything, you will be disappointed though, and I do want to warn you of that. That's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed hearing me talk about these films. I hope you share down below the movies that you want to see the most after hearing me talk about them. I hope you all have a nice day.